Welcome to the Magic, Money, and Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Donovan, a psychic business coach, strategist, and wealth activator for coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs who are ready to activate their millionaire frequency and step into overflow by scaling to seven figures and beyond without sacrificing their freedom or soul. With over 2 million in sales across my online and offline businesses, I know what it takes to create real sustainable overflow. And through my work, hundreds of entrepreneurs have stepped into their highest wealth timeline, collapsing income ceilings and calling in 30K, 50K, and even 100K months with more clarity, ease, and magic than ever before. Inside this space, we blend grounded strategy, energetic mastery, and a whole lot of magic so you can create wealth that flows, a business that expands you, and a life that feels as rich as it is free. This is your space to activate your millionaire frequency and live inside your overflow era. You're here for millions, magic, and more life. So let's make it inevitable. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another podcast episode. So today we're talking about the energy of overflow. And before we get into the podcast, if you haven't done so already, make sure you join the Attune to Seven Figure Wealth podcast. That is where I'm putting all of my activations and clearings, healings, all the fun stuff to help you really attune to seven figure wealth. This podcast will have all of the teachings of the topics, and then the activations and the yummy stuff are going to be in the private podcast. So I'm going to put it in the show notes, but in order to get really the full impact of this podcast episode, you're going to want to make sure you also have access to the activation. So when we think of overflow, like at its base core, overflow is the energy of more than enough. More than enough money, more than enough time, more than enough joy, more than enough love. This is where you have more than you need. But most women will not allow themselves to feel overflow because they have linked to having more than they need as bad and having guilt towards it, or that, anything to do with too much is bad, or because they have guilt around debt. And to be honest, you cannot call an overflow when you're actually feeling all of these negative emotions and guilt for the money that you have, or feeling bad about what you have. You're not going to call in more. When you start rejecting what's already there, whether it be out loud or silently, you block overflow from coming in. And I see this so often with clients. It's like they'll come to me and they will want to step into overflow. And, an overflow is different for every single person. Overflow, I remember when overflow for me was, having a 10K month in my business. And it was like, it's the energy of having more profit. When we're talking strictly money, having more income than expenses at its core, right? But when we are sitting here and as our business grows, like I remember when, overflow was $10,000 months, but now as my business, as I have a team, my expenses have grown, my overflow is a different amount. And so what you have to look at is, what is your level of your base of like, okay, this is what my expenses are, and here's when I will start feeling an overflow. And I will tell you, most women believe that they cannot have overflow until they are debt free. And all of the guilt that they have around debt, all the frustration, the resentment, the icky feelings, the irritation. I cannot tell you how many women have told me how much they are irritated or mad when they get their credit card bill. When you look at debt, it is not inherently a bad thing. It's neutral. It is simply someone giving you money now, allowing you to pay it back over time. But instead of feeling gratitude for that, most women will constrict when they think about it. They feel the pressure, the shame, the fear around the interest growing, feeling like I did something wrong or bad. A lot of that is society, parents. But this constriction pushes them right back into scarcity, which then when they go to sell, it's coming from a place of lack, scarcity, desperation, which is the exact opposite of overflow. They start not making the same sales. They start attracting clients that are unaligned, that ask for refunds, that cancel their contracts, that ghost on payments. But when you allow yourself to say, okay, I have this debt, I am choosing to pay it off over time. You forgive yourself if there was any purchases maybe that were made, out of lack or fear or FOMO or whatever it may be that you purchased it and maybe it wasn't the most aligned purchase. And if that is the case, you need to forgive yourself for that. But you need to reframe debt as neutral and feel the gratitude that someone let you borrow that money. But then recognize that you get to, be an overflow and have things that you want to put the money towards and pay off debt. And there will be a time where you're like, you know what? Like, actually, it feels in so much like for me right now, I am in the space where it actually feels like overflow to make like double, triple payments on, my mortgage, my any type of, bills that we have, credit card, any type of expenses. It actually feels an overflow to be like, oh my gosh, like I get to pay double on this. Paying it down, like being able to pay it off faster, like that feels really fun for me right now in this stage. It didn't always, and before I got into this stage where it was like really I just like a switch came on of like, nope, we're just paying everything off. It was this energy of I can pay, my credit card bill. And I can also use this money for something in overflow, whether that be in a savings, whether that be investments, whether that be in something that is going to bring me joy and pleasure and that I could never have too much of. And when I shifted from the guilt of debt, when I shifted from like what I have done is bad, and I started saying, I get to pay this off and I get to have more. And it's okay that it's not, or, I get to pay the bill, but it's not like I'm paying off the entire debt. That shifted for me because one of the things that I had found when I was in that stage is actually paying off debt at that point wasn't exciting to me. It didn't motivate me. It wasn't something that, I got up and I was like, oh my gosh, I get to pay off, pay my credit card today. I wasn't feeling that way. And so it didn't motivate me. However, I would have in the back of my mind somebody being like, I remember my dad, like, you don't want to pay that much interest or whatever. And I had just, when I shifted from feeling guilt around that, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to pay my bill and I have this left over, and it's okay that the whole thing doesn't go to my credit card statement. I can pay a good chunk of it. Like I started, I would give myself different amounts. Like, okay, I have this amount. I'm going to put 50% of it on the um, credit card, and I'm going to put 50% of this payment into, whatever felt good at the time. Sometimes that was putting it into savings. Sometimes that was investing it back into the business or buying something fun. And as like, my priorities shifted, as life shifted, as business shifted, I would adjust that. Sometimes it felt, really good to put more, and sometimes it felt really good to put less, as long as I was always making my payments. And that really just when I started to expand with that, it was like making the money felt fun. It became motivational because what I would find is like this money of like, okay, you get, let's say you have a $10,000 month and you get this 10,000 and it goes right to your credit card. And then there's nothing left over and you feel like you're starting back at zero. It can become defeating. Okay, not like like it's just it can become like ugh, just not motivating at all. Like that's kind of just like the word that I can describe it with. So you don't have to wait until you're debt free to still feel an overflow. Now, overflow isn't like, again, I said it's not a specific number. For some people, it will be different, but it's also a frequency. It's this energy of I have more than I need. And gratitude is what will actually shift that. Gratitude is the energetic antidote to lack and scarcity. It's the gateway to overflow. It is seeing what you already have in front of you that you have more than enough of. It moves you from looking at like what's missing, what's wrong, all these low vibrational feelings to actually feeling abundant when you see that there's so much overflow already in your life. And this is where you can ask yourself, do you have like if you can sleep in the week, during the weekends, you have an overflow of sleep. The air around you, we have an overflow of air. We have more air right now than we need. But you can't reach this overflow until you're waiting for everything to be perfect. You have to start seeing how you have more than enough already here. Right? You have to allow it in while things are still messy, while debt still exists, while uncertainty is there. And that gratitude is going to stabilize the overflow because it trains your energy to hold more than enough. See where more than enough is actually good. Because women will sabotage overflow when they have been conditioned to believe that more is bad. You don't need that much. Don't be greedy. Save some for later. Or I remember when I was young, and this is going to date me as a millennial, but it was like don't put more on your plate because there's starving children in some country. And so it was like, oh, I had to take the bare minimum, make sure I only, got on my plate what was the exact amount enough that I was going to eat. Mind you, I was a little kid who didn't really understand the eyes and stomach and how that all worked. And when sometimes I was hungry and I would look at something and put more on my plate. And this conditioning can show up everywhere. Feeling guilt when money, clients, or support exceed expectations, associating too much with something negative, too much food, too much rest, too much attention, too much money, right? Like this feeling of if you have more than you need means you're taking away from somebody else, which is complete bullshit. But often we're told that. And I will see this as taking up, I get this with clients a lot when they first come into my spaces. It's like, oh, I don't want to take too much time of the call. I don't want to take up too much time, in Voxer. I'm like, no, girl, that we have overflow. Like, take up as much time. Take up what you need, what you desire. There's no such thing as taking up too much, as if you are taking away from somebody else, but we have been conditioned to that. So we will block ourselves from actually accessing overflow. Could you imagine being like, I can only breathe this many times per day, per hour, because otherwise I'm going to suck up all of the oxygen and then nobody else is going to be able to breathe. You don't walk around doing that. So, why do you do that for all of the other things? Why does having more pleasure than you need, why would that take away from anyone else? It is not a finite resource. But we think money is a finite resource. We think love is a finite resource, that there's only so much, there couldn't be more, right? For those of you who are mothers or have children, nieces, nephews, you have some sort of child in your life. Could there ever be too much love your child gives you? Could you ever give your child too much love? Right? But when we associate too much, like I remember when I started looking at my like overflow and I would journal around like what what would be bad to have too much of. And I remember like writing down things that I had been conditioned to think of. Too much weight, too much sweets, too much, candy or soda, or where it was like too much. And I remember even seeing like, you know, everything in moderation and, even too much water could kill you, things like that. And I would ask myself like, okay, one, is this true? Well, okay, I understand some of the science with things, but could you really have too much? Maybe you need to pace yourself. Maybe you need to do what's healthy for yourself. That'd be like, working until you burn out. Like, yeah, you may need to pace yourself until you build up your stamina and or you hire other people or whatever it may be. But there's so many things in our lives where we have been conditioned that having more than what we need is bad. Right. And so when you start to experience the overflow, because you have these stories, you start to unconsciously contract. You'll start to fear loss, fear judgment. You start to collapse energetically. And then overflow feels unsafe. It triggers the childhood belief that having more than enough is wrong. But by you anchoring into gratitude and awareness, it reverses that conditioning. It tells your energy actually more than enough is safe. More than enough is welcome. More than enough is natural. And you want to also look at where are you settling in your business and in your life for just enough. Getting just enough. And really looking at where is just enough sabotaging your actual desires. So just take a breath for a moment and ask yourself, where are you already in overflow? Maybe it's in time, love, ideas, clients, opportunities. Just ask yourself, where am I already in overflow? Write down or speak aloud like one area where you have more than enough, more than you need. Because again, like a lot of times people will associate like having more than you need as like something toxic. That is a wide spectrum. Like that is a huge jump from having more than you need, being in overflow, to being too much and it's toxic for you. Now feel it in your body where the areas where you have more than enough, and let gratitude expand that energy. Notice what thoughts come up, where you feel guilt, where you start to think this isn't a good thing, this was bad. Overflow begins when noticing what's already flowing to you and letting it in, and then letting it multiply through appreciation and gratitude and saying yes and more, please. Okay. So, just kind of to recap, overflow doesn't happen when everything is paid off. It happens when you stop rejecting, ignoring, self abandoning what's already here. Gratitude is how you are going to build the energetic safety with more. And if you want to experience this activation of overflow, we're going to release some of the lack and scarcity in your body. Make sure you sign up for Attune to Seven Figure Wealth, and you're going to want to look for the overflow activation. It's really going to help you embody the frequency of more than enough. And when you're ready to hold overflow across every level, money, time, business, relationships, clients, join us inside Wealth Unleashed. This is the work that we do, where we step into having more than enough every single day. All right, my loves. So if this podcast you enjoyed it, I would love to know. Please share with me your ahas, your breakthroughs. It is my love language to hear your breakthroughs and light bulb moments. Like as a former teacher, hearing like I don't get to see the light bulbs like I used to when I was teaching like elementary school students. So it literally warmed my heart so much when you guys message me and share what was a breakthrough for you? What was the light bulb moment? So message me on Instagram at it's Jennifer Donovan or on Facebook. Everything is going to be linked down below. And I hope you have the most amazing day, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Magic, Money, and Marketing Podcast. If you loved what you heard today, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps more women like you activate their millionaire frequency and step fully into their overflow era. If you're ready to create wealth that feels as good as it looks, check the show notes for the next aligned way to work together, or send me a DM on Instagram at It's Jennifer Donovan. You're here for millions, magic, and more life, so let's make it inevitable.